Father visited the single pregnant woman's house and couldn't believe what she did. Father Richard Johnson took a deep breath before knocking on the door of the modest house on the outskirts of Riverside. The ladies from the parish had pressured him so much that he had no choice but to make that pastoral visit he had been dreading. That's when the door opened, and he saw Ashley Wilson, 28 years old, her 7-month belly clearly visible, holding a paint roller and smiling as if she were expecting his visit. What shocked him most wasn't just that she was pregnant and single, but what she was doing inside that house. "Father Richard, I'm so glad you came," said Ashley, wiping her hand on her jeans before greeting him. "Please come in. Sorry for the mess, but I'm just finishing painting the last room." The priest hesitated at the doorstep, still trying to process the warm welcome. He had arrived prepared to meet a remorseful and ashamed young woman, but Ashley radiated a joy that completely disarmed him. "Ashley, I came because, well, the community is concerned about your situation," he began, stepping into the modest living room that smelled of fresh paint. "Oh, I can imagine," she replied, gesturing to the beige sofa for him to sit. "Would you like some coffee? I just made some." Father Richard looked around as she went to the kitchen. The walls were painted in soft colors, and paint cans were neatly stacked in the corner. What caught his attention the most were the light wooden cribs leaning against the wall. "Ashley," he said when she returned with 2 cups, "why do you have so many cribs?" "Oh, that," she smiled, placing a hand on her belly. "It's part of the project. This house, which I inherited from my grandmother Dorothy, is going to become a temporary shelter for single mothers who have nowhere else to go." The priest nearly dropped his cup. "A shelter? But you're in a difficult situation yourself." "Exactly why, Father. I know how hard it is to go through this alone. My grandmother always said this house was meant to welcome, not to exclude." Ashley sat in the armchair across from him, adjusting her pink blouse that accentuated her pregnancy. "When I found out I was expecting and Brandon, well, when he decided to stay with his wife, I thought my life was over. But then I remembered the stories my grandmother told about the women she helped right here in this house decades ago. Brandon. He's a married man who works at an accounting firm downtown. I met him in a computer class. He said he was going to leave his wife, that he loved me." Her voice wavered for a moment but quickly steadied. "But I found out he tells the same story to other women." Father Richard felt a pang in his chest. For years he had preached about sin and judgment, but here was a young woman who, despite being hurt, had chosen to help others. "And how do you plan to support this shelter?" "With the child support, Brandon will pay once the baby is born. I've already spoken to an attorney Jennifer. She explained all my rights. I'm also applying for some city assistance programs." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. Just then there was a knock at the door. Ashley got up to answer and returned with a woman around 35, wearing worn-out clothes and carrying a small suitcase. "Father, this is Brittany," Ashley introduced. She came from Lakewood. "Brittany, this is Father Richard from the neighborhood church." Brittany greeted him timidly, clearly pregnant as well, though earlier in her pregnancy. "Ashley told me I could stay here until I get back on my feet," Brittany explained. "My family kicked me out when I told them about the baby." "And the baby's father?" asked the priest, immediately regretting the direct question. "He left when he found out," replied Brittany, her eyes welling up. "Said it was my problem." Ashley put her arm around Brittany with a tenderness that deeply moved the priest. "Here, you won't be judged, Brittany. We'll take care of each other." "Ashley, can I speak with you privately?" asked the priest. They stepped out to the back porch, where there was a small garden with a few plants. "Ashley, I admire your generosity, but have you stopped to think about the difficulties you'll face? The community won't easily accept this idea. And you, alone, pregnant?" "Father, with all due respect, but the community spent months looking at me like I had leprosy." The ladies whispered when I walked by. The neighbors turned their backs on me. "If they don't accept me as I am, why should I worry about pleasing them? I understand your point, but..." Do you know what was the last straw? Ashley interrupted. Last week, Mrs. Margaret came here to tell me I was setting a bad example for the young women in the church. You know what I found out 2 days later? That her daughter, Kayla, is 3 months pregnant, and she hid it from the whole family. The girl is desperate, even thinking about, well, doing something drastic. Father Richard knew Kayla, a 19-year-old girl, always present at church activities. Did you talk to Kayla? I did, and you know what she told me? That she was ashamed to turn to her mother because Mrs. Margaret always spoke badly of me, saying single mothers are irresponsible and no good. Now the girl is terrified of her family's reaction. And what did you do? I offered help. Told her when she was ready to tell her family, she could come here to talk, that I wouldn't judge her or demand anything from her. They went back inside the house where Brittany was helping organize one of the rooms. Brittany has experience with childcare, explained Ashley. She worked at a daycare before getting pregnant. We're thinking of setting up a little system here. I'll handle the administrative side and the renovations, and she'll help with the babies when they're born. You've thought of everything, murmured the priest, impressed with the planning. It didn't happen overnight, Father. I've been organizing this for 2 months. Attorney Jennifer helped me with all the legal parts. The lawyer from the parish next door, Attorney Michael, also gave some guidance. Attorney Michael Roberts. Yes, do you know him? He sometimes attends our church. He's a man of integrity. Truthfully, Father Richard was starting to feel small in front of this young woman. While he worried about appearances and judgments, Ashley was literally building a solution to a real problem. Ashley, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Don't you feel angry? At Brandon? At the situation? At the people who judge you? Ashley stopped organizing things and sat down again, stroking her belly. I did, Father. Oh, how I did. The first few months I cried so much I thought I'd dehydrate. I hated Brandon so much it made me sick. And the people, oh, the anger I felt towards some church folks was terrible. And how did you get past it? It was my grandmother Dorothy, even after she passed, who helped me. I was cleaning out her belongings here at home when I found an old diary. I discovered she'd also been a single mother back in the 50s. Imagine how hard it was back then. Your grandmother? But she was one of the most respected women in the community. Exactly. She had my dad when she was 22. Her boyfriend disappeared when he found out she was pregnant, and her family kicked her out. She came to live in this little house alone and worked hard to raise my dad. Brittany came closer, curious to hear the story. In her diary, I found out that in the 60s and 70s, this house sheltered several women in similar situations. My grandmother used to help in secret because she knew what it was like to be alone and helpless. Did she never tell the family about it? Asked Brittany. Never. She was afraid of their judgment. But in her diary she wrote, "One day when I'm no longer here, I hope someone in the family will continue this mission, but openly, without fear, because helping is not a sin." Father Richard felt a lump in his throat. He remembered Mrs. Dorothy well, a woman who always participated in church activities, always ready to help. When I read that, Father, I understood my pregnancy wasn't a punishment. It was an opportunity, a chance to carry on my grandmother's legacy, but without hiding, without shame. Just then the phone rang. Ashley answered, and from the conversation, Father Richard could tell it was someone in distress. "Kayla? Calm down. Take a breath. She found out? Okay, come here now, we'll talk." Ashley hung up and turned to them. That was Kayla. Her mother found out she's pregnant and kicked her out. She's on her way here. "Kicked her out?" asked the priest, alarmed. "Mrs. Margaret said she won't have a worthless daughter under her roof." Kayla's on the street with a small suitcase, desperate. Father Richard stood abruptly. "This can't be happening. I'll talk to Mrs. Margaret." "Father, wait." Ashley held his arm. "Let Kayla get here first. We'll hear her side. If you go there now, Mrs. Margaret will only get more upset." 20 minutes later, Kayla arrived, her eyes red from crying. She was a slight young woman with brown hair tied in a ponytail and simple clothes. "Kayla," said the priest, standing to greet her, "tell me what happened." "Father Richard," she gasped, surprised to see him. I didn't know you were here. Don't worry, I'm here as a friend, not as church authority. Tell me everything. Kayla sat beside Brittany, who handed her a glass of water. My mother found the test results I'd hidden in my room. When she confronted me, I couldn't lie. I told her everything, that I'm 3 months pregnant, that the father is Tyler, the guy I've been dating for 6 months. And how did she react? She was furious, father. Said I was a disgrace, that I'd shamed the family. Told me she wouldn't raise any bastard in her house and gave me 2 choices, either take care of the problem or leave. Take care of the problem? Asked Ashley. She wants me to get rid of the baby, said she knows a woman who does it for a fair price. Father Richard was stunned. Mrs. Margaret always seemed like a devout woman active in the church. And Tyler, what's his stance? He wants to marry me, father. He already talked to his parents and they're fine with it. The problem is, my mother said she'll disown me if I marry while pregnant, that she'll tell the whole church I'm a prostitute. Kayla, Brittany said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Do you want this baby? So much, she answered, touching her still flat stomach. I know I'm young. I know it'll be hard. But Tyler and I love each other. We want to start a family. Ashley looked at the priest as if to say, see what I was talking about? Kayla, you can stay here as long as you need, Ashley offered, until you and Tyler get settled. But I can't pay. No one pays here. The only thing we ask is that when you're back on your feet, you help other girls going through the same thing. Father Richard watched silently. Here were 3 pregnant women, all rejected by their families or partners, yet supporting each other with a strength he'd never seen before. Ashley, can I use your phone? I need to call Mrs. Margaret. Father, with all due respect, but maybe this isn't the best time. I have to try. Kayla is a minor, and Mrs. Margaret has been my parishioner for years. Maybe I can help her see the situation differently. The call was tense. Mrs. Margaret shouted so loudly that everyone could hear her on the other end of the line. She accused the priest of condoning immorality and said she never wanted to see him in her house again. So? Ashley asked when he hung up. She won't budge. Said her daughter chose the path of ruin and she won't tolerate it. She even accused me of encouraging immoral behavior just for being here. I'm so sorry, Kayla, Ashley said. But you need to know your mother's decision has nothing to do with you. It's about her fear of other people's judgment. What do you mean? Your mother spent years judging me, calling single mothers irresponsible. Now that her daughter is in the same situation, she can't admit she was wrong. It's easier to reject you than to face her own prejudices. Father Richard recognized the wisdom in Ashley's words. For years, he had watched Mrs. Margaret criticize other families, always positioning herself as a moral example. Kayla, he said, would you like me to talk to Tyler and his parents? Maybe we can move the wedding forward. You'd do that? Of course, if you love each other and want to build a family, it's my duty as a priest to guide you, not judge you. At that moment, Father Richard had a revelation about his own role as a clergyman. He realized he had spent years preaching judgment and condemnation when he should have focused on compassion and guidance. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Father Richard found himself visiting Ashley's house often. Officially, he said he was providing pastoral care, but the truth was, he was genuinely impressed by the project she was running. Tyler showed up on the 3rd day, a 22-year-old factory worker at an auto parts plant. He was clearly in love with Kayla and ready to take responsibility. Father, I want to marry Kayla as soon as possible, he said. My parents already agreed, and they'll help us with a small room in their backyard until we can get our own place. And financially, how will you manage? I earn a decent wage at the factory, and Kayla can work at my aunt's store until the baby comes. It won't be easy, but we love each other and want this. Kayla, are you sure? I am, Father. I'd rather have a simple life with someone who loves me than go back to a house where I'm not accepted. Then let's arrange the wedding. I just need your documents. When the priest announced at church that he would officiate Kayla's wedding, the reaction was immediate. Mrs. Margaret stormed into the vestry that same day, furious. Father Richard, you can't do this. My daughter is making a mistake, marrying some random factory worker while she's pregnant. Mrs. Margaret, Kayla is a responsible young woman making a mature decision. Tyler is a hard-working, honest man. But she's pregnant. It's a disgrace to our family. The real disgrace, Mrs. Margaret, would be abandoning your daughter when she needs support the most. You've changed, Father. Ever since you started visiting that Ashley's house, you're different. You're right, I have changed. I've learned my role as a priest isn't to judge but to welcome. And Ashley taught me a lot about compassion. Compassion. That woman is encouraging immorality. She turned her house into a den of sin. Mrs. Margaret. The priest raised his voice for the first time. I won't let you speak like that. Ashley is helping homeless women, including her own daughter. Well, you should know I'll be speaking to the bishop about your behavior. A priest shouldn't condone these situations. Mrs. Margaret stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving Father Richard worried. He knew she was capable of causing real trouble for him within the church hierarchy. That afternoon, he went to Ashley's house again to share the threat. Ashley, I need to warn you that Mrs. Margaret will try to cause problems for me at the church, and indirectly that could affect you all too. Father, you don't need to worry about us. If your position in the church is compromised because of what you're doing here, maybe it's best if you stop coming. No, he said firmly. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing the work God truly wants from me. If Mrs. Margaret wants to talk to the bishop, let her. Are you sure? Ashley, you taught me that true faith shows through actions, not words. I won't abandon you now. Brittany, who was organizing diapers donated by some caring neighbors, approached. Father, can I tell you something? Of course, Brittany. Yesterday I got a call from my sister over in Lakewood. She told me our mother regrets kicking me out, said she wants to forgive me. That's good, isn't it? Yeah, but there's a problem. She wants me to come home, but only if I give the baby up for adoption. Said she doesn't want the shame of having a bastard grandson in the family. Ashley stopped what she was doing and looked at Brittany. What did you say? I told her I won't give up my son to please anyone, that I'd rather stay here where I'm accepted as I am than go back to a place where I'd only be tolerated if I followed their rules. Brittany, are you sure about this decision? Asked the priest. Your family might change their minds in time. Father, with all due respect, but my family had 9 months to change their minds. If they'll only take me back by denying my own son, then they don't really love me. Father Richard fell silent, reflecting on Brittany's words. How many times had he advised people to return to families that rejected them, all in the name of reconciliation? Brittany, you're right. No one should have to choose between their family's love and the love for their own child. Is that really what you think, Father? Asked Ashley, surprised. Yes, it is. I'm learning that true love doesn't come with conditions. If Brittany's family can't accept their grandson, that's their problem, not hers. Kayla, who was resting on the couch, smiled. Father, you've really changed. I remember when I was little, you always talked about obeying parents, respecting elders. And that's still important, Kayla. But I've learned that respect shouldn't be confused with blind submission. The three of you have taught me that sometimes it takes courage to break cycles of rejection and judgment. Just then, someone knocked at the door. Ashley went to answer and returned with a well-dressed woman around 60 years old, though her expression was troubled. Everyone, this is Mrs. Shirley, Brandon's mother. Father Richard stood immediately, sensing the tension in the air. Good afternoon, Mrs. Shirley greeted, clearly uncomfortable. I came to talk to Ashley about, well, the situation. Go ahead, Mrs. Shirley. I have nothing to hide, said Ashley, gesturing to a chair. First, I want to say I'm deeply ashamed of my son's behavior. When I learned the whole truth about what he did to you, I was horrified. The whole truth? About him lying that he was going to leave his wife, about him having other relationships. I found out when his wife came to me in tears. His wife knows about me. She knows about you and 3 other women. She hired a private investigator and found out everything. Now she wants a divorce and full custody of their children. Ashley sat down heavily, clearly shaken by the information. 3 other women. Unfortunately, yes. Two of them are also pregnant. My son has become a man I don't recognize." Father Richard watched Ashley grow pale. Even knowing Brandon was married, discovering she was just one of several mistresses was devastating. "Mrs. Shirley, why did you come to tell me this?" "Because I want you to know you're not alone in this, and also because I want to help with the baby." "How so?" "I want to be part of my grandchild's life. I know I can't fix what my son did, but I don't want to miss the chance to know my grandchild." "And your son? Does he know you're here?" "Brandon doesn't know, and frankly, I don't care about his opinion. He made terrible choices, and now he'll have to face the consequences. But the child is innocent." Brittany and Kayla exchanged surprised glances. It was rare to see someone taking responsibility for their adult child's mistakes. "Mrs. Shirley," Ashley said after a long silence, "I appreciate your gesture, but I need to make it clear that I won't use the baby to blackmail your son or gain financial advantages. I'm preparing to raise this child regardless of your family's help." "I know, and that's exactly why I want to help. Any mother who has the dignity to refuse blackmail and prepares to raise a child alone deserves respect and support." "And how do you plan to help?" "First, by making sure Brandon pays child support properly. I've already spoken to my lawyer about it. Second, by offering practical support. A stroller, crib, clothes, diapers. And third, if you'll allow it, I'd like to have contact with the child." Father Richard was impressed by Mrs. Shirley's maturity. It was a rare and courageous attitude. "Mrs. Shirley," he interjected, "may I ask how you found out about this space project Ashley is working on?" "Through Mrs. Barbara, my neighbor. She told me Ashley was helping other single mothers and that the church priest was supporting them. I got curious and decided to come see for myself. And what did you think? I was impressed, and also ashamed I didn't have this courage when I was younger. In the 80s, when I was younger, I knew several women who went through similar situations and didn't know how to help." "Did you experience something like that?" "Not exactly, but, well, when I was 25, my younger sister got pregnant out of wedlock. At the time, my parents kicked her out and forbade the whole family from having contact with her. I obeyed like a fool, and I still regret it to this day." "What happened to your sister?" "She managed on her own, raised her daughter, got a nursing degree, had a good life. But I lost years of closeness with her and my niece because of my family's prejudice. We only reconnected after my parents passed away." "Is that why you want to help?" "It's a way to make up for past mistakes, and also to show Brandon there are better ways to handle responsibilities." Ashley was clearly moved. "Mrs. Shirley, I accept your help, but I want to make it clear this doesn't mean I'll make it easy for Brandon to have a relationship with the child. He'll have to prove he deserves that privilege." "I completely agree. My son needs to grow up and take responsibility, and maybe seeing your example will help him become a real man." At that moment, Kayla stood up abruptly, clutching her stomach. "Oh, guys, I don't think I'm feeling well." "What's happening?" Ashley asked, concerned. "I'm feeling a strange pain, and I think I'm bleeding." Father Richard stood up immediately. "Let's go to the hospital now." "Brittany, do you have a driver's license?" "I do, and I'm a good driver." "Then take my car keys. Mrs. Shirley, can you come with us?" "Of course, let's all go." On the way to the hospital, Kayla was pale and frightened. Ashley held her hand, trying to calm her. "Kayla, breathe slowly. It could be something simple. What if I lose the baby, Ashley? What if it's because of all this stress with my mom?" "Don't think like that. We'll get to the hospital and the doctors will take care of you." At the hospital, while Kayla was being treated, they waited in the lobby. Father Richard took the opportunity to call Tyler, who arrived in a rush 20 minutes later. "How is she? Is the baby okay?" he asked desperately. "We don't know yet. The doctors are examining her," Ashley replied. "This is all Mrs. Margaret's fault," Tyler said angrily. "Kayla hasn't stopped crying since her mother kicked her out. All this stress." "Tyler, blaming someone won't help now," the priest said. "Let's hope everything turns out fine." After 2 hours, the doctor came out to speak with them. "The young woman is fine, and so is the baby. It was just light bleeding, probably caused by stress and exhaustion, but she needs complete rest for the next few days." Everyone sighed in relief. "Doctor, can she go home today?" Ashley asked. "Yes, but she must rest completely. No physical exertion, no excessive worries, and if there's any unusual symptom, bring her back immediately." When they got home, Kayla was calmer, but still shaken. "Ashley, I'm sorry for causing all this trouble." "What are you apologizing for, sweetheart? These things happen. What matters is that you and the baby are okay." "Kayla," Mrs. Shirley said, "can I make a suggestion?" "Of course." "Maybe it's time for you and Tyler to have a serious talk about marriage. Not out of pressure, but because you both seem ready to take on this responsibility together." "You think so?" "I do. And I also think you should make one last attempt to talk to your mother. Sometimes people need a wake-up call." "But she was very clear." "Kayla," the priest interjected, "Mrs. Shirley is right. What if Tyler and I go talk to your mother? Sometimes a third person can mediate these situations better." "You'd do that?" "Of course. If it doesn't work, at least we tried. And if it does, you'll have your family back at the most important time of your life." Tyler agreed with the idea, and the next day they went together to Mrs. Margaret's house. The conversation was tense at first. Mrs. Margaret received them coldly and repeated that she wouldn't change her mind. "Mrs. Margaret," the priest said, "do you really want your daughter to get married without her mother there? Do you want your grandchild to grow up without knowing their grandmother? She made her choices, Father, and you're making yours. You're choosing pride over love for your daughter." "It's not pride, it's principle." "What principle?" Tyler asked, forcing himself to stay calm. "The principle of abandoning those we love when they need us most." "You don't understand. If I accept this, I'd be telling the whole church I approve of immoral behavior." "Mrs. Margaret," the priest said, "can I tell you something?" "Go ahead." "These past few days, I've learned more about true Christianity from Ashley and the girls she's helping than in years of theological studies. They've taught me that love doesn't judge, doesn't abandon, doesn't set conditions. But Father, do you know the story of the adulterous woman in the Gospel? When Jesus said, 'Let he who is without sin cast the first stone'?" "I do." "Then you know Jesus didn't condemn her. He only said, 'Go and sin no more.' He didn't reject her, didn't cast her out, didn't tell her family to abandon her." Mrs. Margaret was silent for a few moments. "And if I take Kayla back, what will people think?" "That you're a mother who loves her daughter unconditionally," replied Tyler. "And honestly, anyone who thinks otherwise doesn't deserve your concern." "Mrs. Margaret," said the priest, "may I ask a difficult question?" "Go ahead." "Do you prefer keeping up appearances in front of the community or having your daughter and grandson close by?" Mrs. Margaret began to cry. "Of course I'd rather have my daughter, but it's so hard to admit I might have been too harsh." "It's never too late to make things right," said Tyler, stepping closer. "Kayla loves you very much. She's suffering just as much from the rejection as from the pregnancy." "How is she?" "Yesterday she had some bleeding and ended up in the hospital, from stress. The doctor said she needs to stay calm without any worries." Mrs. Margaret panicked. "My daughter was in the hospital, and I didn't even know?" "She's fine, and the baby is too. But Mrs. Margaret, Kayla needs her mother now." "Where is she staying?" "At Ashley's house, along with other mothers in the same situation." "And are they taking good care of my daughter?" "Very well," said the priest. "Ashley is an exceptional young woman. She's been caring for Kayla like a sister." "I want to see my daughter," said Mrs. Margaret, standing up. "Can I go with you?" When they arrived at Ashley's house, Kayla was on the couch, resting and talking with Brittany about baby names. When she saw her mother walk in, she froze. "Mom?" "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." Mrs. Margaret approached and hugged Kayla, who burst into tears. "Mom, I was so scared of losing the baby yesterday, and the first thing I thought was that you wouldn't even know if something happened to me. Darling, forgive me. I was a fool. I cared more about what others would say than your well-being." "You're not angry with me anymore?" "Honey, I was never angry at you. I was angry at the situation, afraid of judgment, ashamed to admit I didn't know how to handle it all. Tyler stepped forward timidly. Mrs. Margaret, I want you to know I love Kayla very much, and I'll take good care of her and the baby. Tyler, I'm sorry if I was rude to you. I was desperate and took it out on you. It's okay, Mrs. Margaret. What matters is that now we can be a family. Ashley, who had been silently watching the whole scene, approached. Mrs. Margaret, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. Kayla talks about you all the time. Ashley, I owe you an apology too. I said terrible things about you without even knowing you. Don't worry. What matters is that you're here now when your daughter needs you most. Can you tell me more about this project you're working on? Ashley explained again about the temporary shelter, her grandmother's story, and their future plans. And you're doing all this alone? I'm not alone. I have Brittany who helps me a lot. Father Richard has been guiding us. Mrs. Shirley, the mother of, well, my baby's father, is also helping. And now we have you and Tyler supporting Kayla. Ashley, can I make a proposal? Of course. I have some savings set aside. I'd like to contribute to the project, and I know some women from church who could help with donations. Mrs. Margaret, that would be wonderful. But are you sure? I am. It's my way of apologizing not just to you, but to all the women I judged without knowing their stories. Father Richard smiled, seeing how everything was falling into place almost miraculously. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 2 weeks later, Ashley's house had been completely transformed. With the help of Mrs. Margaret, Mrs. Shirley, and several other women from the community, the temporary shelter project was taking shape. The first major change was structural. Tyler, who had worked in construction before going to the factory, rallied some friends to make small renovations that improved the use of the rooms. Ashley, with this partition here, we can create another small bedroom, explained Tyler, showing the floor plan. And if we add an extra bathroom back there, it'll be more comfortable for everyone. Tyler, won't that cost too much? No. We can get the materials at a discount through the factory suppliers, and the labor will be handled by me and some buddies on weekends. But you're already doing so much. Ashley, after everything you've done for Kayla, for all of us, this is the least I can do. The second change was even more significant. Mrs. Margaret had spoken with other women from the church and created a kind of support network. Ashley, Mrs. Rose offered to teach crafts to the girls. Mrs. Martha wants to teach basic cooking. And Mrs. Helen, who's a retired seamstress, volunteered to teach sewing. That's fantastic. This way they can learn a trade while waiting for their babies to be born. Exactly, and Father Richard suggested we also hold some talks about baby care, breastfeeding, those kinds of things. Father is really involved in the project, isn't he? He is. And you know what? I think this project has changed him too. He's more approachable, more human. Mrs. Margaret was right. Father Richard had undergone a deep transformation. His Sunday sermons now spoke more about compassion and less about judgment. He had become more accessible to the faithful, especially those going through hardships. Father, said Mrs. Shirley, who had become a regular visitor to the house, may I ask you a personal question? Of course, Mrs. Shirley. Aren't you having trouble at church because of your involvement in the project? To be honest, some of the more conservative parishioners are questioning my stance, and I know Mrs. Margaret even spoke to the bishop about my inappropriate behavior. And the bishop? What was his reaction? It's interesting you ask. Bishop William called me in for a talk last week. I was prepared for the worst. What happened? He surprised me. He said he'd looked into the project and was impressed with the results. Apparently, the number of young pregnant women abandoned by their families had decreased in the area, and he credited the work we're doing. Really? He said the church needs more initiatives like this. He even authorized an official contribution from the diocese to the project. Wow, what a change. Exactly. But the most important thing was what he told me at the end. Father Richard, you're doing exactly what Christ would do if he were here today. At that moment, Brittany walked into the room clearly upset. Guys, you won't believe what happened. What is it, Brittany? asked Ashley. I got a call from my sister. My mum's in the hospital in Lakewood. She had a heart attack. Oh no, how is she? Out of danger, but the doctor said she wants to see me. She's asking me to come. And will you go? Asked Mrs. Shirley. I don't know. I'm afraid it's another manipulation. What if she tries to convince me to give the baby up for adoption again? Brittany, said Father Richard, I think you should go, at least to talk. If it's manipulation, you're emotionally stronger now to resist. But if it's genuine remorse, you might miss the chance for reconciliation. Father is right, Ashley agreed, and we'll be here when you come back, no matter what happens there. Do you really think I should go? I think you should follow your heart, said Mrs. Margaret. But remember, now you have a family here that accepts you unconditionally. That gives you strength to face any situation. The next day, Brittany traveled to Lakewood accompanied by Tyler, who offered to drive her. Meanwhile, the house continued welcoming new residents. Heather arrived, a 19-year-old girl kicked out by her stepfather. Then came Megan, 23, who lost her job when the company found out she was pregnant. Ashley, said Heather on her second day in the house, can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you do this? Help all of us without asking for anything in return. Heather, when I found out I was pregnant, I felt like the loneliest person in the world. I thought my life was over, that I'd never be happy again. And what changed? I found my grandmother's diary and discovered she went through the same thing, but the difference is, she had no one to help her. She had to face it all alone. So you decided to be for other women what you wish someone had been for your grandmother. Exactly. And you know what? Helping you all is helping me too. It made me realize my pregnancy isn't a tragedy. It's an opportunity. An opportunity for what? To create a different kind of family based on love and acceptance. To show my child that family isn't just about blood, but about who chooses to stand by you in hard times. Ashley, can I say something? Of course. You're going to be an amazing mother. Megan, who had been listening, stepped closer. Ashley, I've been thinking about something. When our babies are born and we get settled, what's going to happen to this place? What do you mean? Well, the three of you will eventually leave. Kayla's marrying Tyler, Brittany will decide whether to stay here or go back to Lakewood, and I'll look for a little place for me and my baby. Will the house be empty again? I hadn't thought about that, Ashley admitted. What if we turned this into a permanent project? Heather suggested. Like those who've been here help the new ones who arrive. It'd be like a sisterhood. Heather, that's an amazing idea, Ashley said excitedly. We could create a formal association with bylaws and EIN, everything in order. And then we could receive official donations, partnerships with businesses, Megan added. Girls, do you really want to commit to this long term? Ashley, Heather said, for the first time in my life I feel like I'm part of something important. Of course I want to keep going. Me too, Megan agreed. And I think Kayla and Brittany will want to be part of it as well. Just then, Tyler and Brittany returned from Lakewood. So, Brittany, how did it go? Ashley asked eagerly. It was intense, Brittany replied, sitting on the couch. My mom really did have a heart attack, and you know why? Why? Because she felt too guilty for kicking me out. My sister told me she couldn't sleep, wasn't eating well, kept crying in secret. And what did she say when she saw you? She apologized, cried a lot, said she was an idiot, that she acted on impulse and pride. And here's the interesting part. She wants to move here to Riverside. What do you mean? She wants to sell the house in Lakewood and buy a little place nearby to be close when the baby comes. She said she doesn't want to miss the chance to be a grandmother. And you? What do you think about that? I think everyone deserves a second chance. She was wrong, but she admitted it. And I could tell her regret was sincere. That's wonderful, Brittany, Ashley said, hugging her friend. Ashley, there's one more thing. My mom has a proposal. What kind of proposal? She has experience in administration. She worked for years at an accounting firm. She wants to help organize this project professionally. Really? She said if you all agree she can handle all the bureaucratic side, legalizing the association, organizing the finances, seeking official partnerships, things like that. "Tyler, what do you think?" asked Ashley. "I think it would be great. You all have the heart and the will, but you need someone who understands the technical side. And Brittany's mum seems genuinely remorseful and willing to help." Heather and Megan were excited about the idea. "Just imagine," said Heather, "a serious, well-structured project that could help hundreds of women." "Not just women," added Megan. "We could include psychological support, legal guidance, vocational training." "You're dreaming big," said Brittany, smiling. "But you know what? I think that's exactly what we need to do. Dream big." Father Richard arrived at that moment and found them all chatting animatedly about plans for the future. "From what I can see, there's been some news here. Father, we're planning to turn this project into something much bigger," explained Ashley. "What kind of thing?" "A formal association that can help not just single mothers, but any woman in a vulnerable situation." "And you think you can handle something of that scale?" "Not alone, but with the help of people like you, Mrs. Shirley, Mrs. Margaret, Brittany's mum, I think so." "Ashley, can I give my opinion?" "Of course." "I think you not only can, but should do this. This project has already changed many lives, including mine. Imagine the impact it could have if expanded. Would you help us?" "Of course, and I'm sure we could get official support from the diocese. Bishop William would be very interested in an initiative like this." "Then it's settled," said Ashley, placing a hand on her belly. "My son or daughter will be born into a world where I'm building something important." "Not just you," said Brittany. "All of us are building something important, for our children and for future mothers who'll need help." At that moment, Ashley felt the baby move more intensely than ever. "I think someone here approves of the idea," she said, laughing and stroking her belly. 3 months later, Dorothy's shelter, named in honor of Ashley's grandmother, was officially registered and running. The original house had been expanded with the purchase of the neighboring lot, funded by community donations and a significant contribution from the diocese. Brittany was the first to give birth, a beautiful boy named Gabriel. Her mother, Mrs. Patricia, had moved to Riverside and become the shelter's official administrator. "Brittany, you have no idea how rewarding it is to hold my grandson in my arms," said Mrs. Patricia, rocking the baby. "I almost lost this because of my foolish pride." "Mom, what matters is that you're here now. And look," Brittany pointed to the makeshift nursery. "In 2 weeks, there'll be 3 more babies here." "3? Kayla's due soon, Ashley too, and Heather's expected at the end of the month." "And you're prepared to care for 4 babies at once?" "We are. Mrs. Shirley hired 2 nurses to be on duty here for the first few weeks, and we have church volunteers to help with daily care." "Father Richard really managed to mobilize the whole community," remarked Mrs. Patricia. "Yeah, he's changed a lot. He used to seem distant, always worried about rules and protocols. Now he's genuinely interested in helping people." "And you know what?" said Mrs. Patricia, watching her sleeping grandson. "I think it was you all who changed him. You showed him that true religion is about welcoming, not judging." A week later, it was Kayla's turn to give birth. A little girl they named Hope. "Kayla, she's perfect," said Ashley, visiting her friend at the hospital. "And what a beautiful name." "Ashley, there couldn't be a more fitting name. This little girl represents everything we've found here. Hope for a better future. And how's motherhood treating you?" "Terrifying and wonderful at the same time. But knowing I have you all, that I have a support system, makes all the difference." "Kayla, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When I started this project, I thought I was helping others, but the truth is, you've helped me so much more. You've taught me that family isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance. Ashley, you saved my life, literally. If it weren't for this project, I don't know what would have happened to me and Hope. We've all saved each other. That's what moves me most about what we've built." 2 days later, Ashley went into labor. It was a difficult delivery, lasting nearly 15 hours but without serious complications. A healthy baby boy was born, and she named him Michael. "Michael Dorothy Wilson," she announced to her friends, still tired but radiant. "Michael, after the archangel who protects, and Dorothy in honor of my grandmother." "Ashley, he's beautiful," said Brittany, cradling the baby. Just like you. And look at this little sweetheart, added Heather, who was in the final stretch of her own pregnancy. Girls, now that my son is here, can I say something? Ashley asked. Of course. This project isn't just mine anymore, it's ours, all of ours. Michael will grow up here, alongside Gabriel, Hope, and Heather's baby. They'll be raised knowing this is what family is, people who choose and support each other. Father Richard came to visit Ashley and the baby later that afternoon. Ashley, how are you feeling? Whole, Father. For the first time in my life, I truly feel whole. And Michael, how is he? Perfect. A calm baby who barely cries. I think he senses the good energy of this place. Ashley, may I tell you something? Of course. You've taught me the true meaning of religious vocation. For years, I thought my role was to be a guardian of morals, a judge of behavior. You showed me it's really about being an instrument of divine love. Father, you gave me the support I needed at the hardest moment of my life. You're the one who legitimized this project in the eyes of the community. Ashley, may I make a confession? Of course. When I first came to see you, I was prepared to reprimand you, to speak of sin and consequences. I never imagined you'd teach me about redemption and compassion. And now, how do you feel about all this? I feel I'm finally being the priest God intended me to be, and I owe that to you and the girls. A week later, Heather also gave birth, a boy she named John. And so the first class of Dorothy's shelter was complete. 4 mothers, 4 babies, and a chosen family formed under the most unlikely circumstances. Girls, Ashley said one afternoon as they all nursed their babies in the main room, do you think our children will understand when they grow up the importance of what we've built here? I think they'll grow up thinking it's normal, said Brittany. To them, it'll be natural to see women helping each other, families built on love, not blood. And is that good? Heather asked. It's wonderful, Kayla replied. It means we're raising a generation that won't judge but will welcome. You know what? Ashley said. I think my grandmother Dorothy would be proud up there. Not only did we carry on her legacy, we multiplied it 1,000-fold. Ashley, how long has it been since you found your grandmother's diary? Brittany asked. 8 months. In 8 months, we turned an abandoned house into a shelter that's already helped 15 women. That's incredible. And it's just the beginning, Heather added. With the new headquarters being built, we'll be able to help 3 times as many people. And with the vocational training Mrs. Shirley is organizing, the women will leave here with a profession, added Kayla. Mrs. Shirley had dedicated herself heart and soul to the project. She used her business connections to secure partnerships and funding. The new Dorothy's Shelter headquarters would open in 3 months, with space for 20 families. Mrs. Shirley has been amazing, said Ashley. I never imagined Brandon's mother would become our greatest ally. And Brandon, how is he handling all this? Asked Heather. According to Mrs. Shirley, he's starting to understand the seriousness of what he did. Apparently he's in therapy now and wants to talk to me when I'm ready. And do you want to talk to him? I don't know yet. For now, I'd rather focus on Michael and the project. But who knows? If he's really changed, if he's matured, maybe it would be good for Michael to know his father. Ashley, can I give my opinion? Said Brittany. Of course. I think you should take your time. You don't have to decide now. And if one day you choose to give him a chance, let it be because you want to, not because of anyone else's pressure. That's what I think too. Michael will grow up surrounded by love and good role models. If Brandon ever becomes part of his life, it should be to add to it, not cause trouble. Just then, Mrs. Margaret arrived with a chocolate cake she had baked. Girls, how are the babies today? All good, Mrs. Margaret. Hope is sleeping through the night now, replied Kayla. That's wonderful. And Michael, Ashley? Growing every day. Yesterday he smiled for the first time. A real smile, not just gas. Oh, how sweet. And Heather's John? That one's a little eater. Nurses every 2 hours like clockwork, said Heather, laughing. And Brittany's Gabriel is the sharpest. He already notices everything around him, added Brittany. Girls, you have no idea how happy it makes me to see you like this, said Mrs. Margaret, getting emotional. Happy, fulfilled, raising your children with so much love. Mrs. Margaret, you're part of this happiness too, said Ashley. Your support was crucial in getting us here. Ashley, can I confess something? Of course. When I first heard you were pregnant, I thought terrible things. I judged you without knowing your story. Now I'm ashamed of those thoughts. Mrs. Margaret, that's in the past. What matters is that you changed, just like all of us did. It's true, and you know what? I think you've revolutionized our community. Before, people were afraid to admit family problems. Now there's a place where they can seek help without judgment. That was always the goal, said Kayla. To create a safe space, not a judgmental one. And it's working. Last week, a young woman from the next neighborhood came for help. She's pregnant and scared to tell her parents. Instead of panicking alone, she knew she could come here. What did you do? First, we talked with her a lot. Then we helped her prepare how to tell her parents. In the end, it all worked out. Her family took it well, and she didn't even have to move in here. That's what matters most, said Brittany. It's not just about physical shelter, but emotional support and guidance. Exactly. Sometimes people just need someone to listen without judging, to help them sort through their thoughts. At that moment, a young woman, about 20, shy and clearly nervous, arrived. Excuse me, are you from Dorothy's shelter? Yes, we are, replied Ashley, standing up. Please come in. What's your name? Megan Taylor. I'm pregnant and, well, I need help. Megan, sit here with me, said Mrs. Margaret, offering a chair. Tell us about your situation. I've been dating a guy, Nathan, for 2 years. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a father and wanted to break up. And your family? How did they react? My parents were disappointed, but they didn't reject me. The problem is they can't afford to help me financially. They're retired with a very low income. Do you work? I used to work at a clothing store, but I was fired when my pregnancy started showing. My boss said customers don't like seeing a pregnant salesperson. Megan, that's discrimination and it's illegal, said Heather. I know, but I don't have money to hire a lawyer. And even if I did, what matters now is getting organized for when the baby comes. Megan, said Ashley, you can stay here as long as you need. We have a room available and we'll help you with both practical and emotional support. But I can't pay. No one pays anything here, sweetheart, explained Brittany. The only thing we ask is that when you're back on your feet, you help other girls going through the same situation. Really? You'd do this for me? Megan, said Kayla, we've all been in situations like yours. We know how hard and scary it is. That's why we're here, so no woman has to face it alone. And about the job, added Mrs. Margaret. I know some people who might help. A friend of mine owns a bakery and was looking for someone to assist her. She won't have any issue with your pregnancy there. Oh my, you're angels, Megan said, starting to cry with relief. We're not angels, Ashley replied. We're women who've learned we're stronger together. 2 hours later, Megan was settled in her room and learning the house's routine. What impressed her most was seeing the 4 mothers caring for their babies collaboratively. Ashley, can I ask you something? Of course, Megan. How do you manage to be so organized? 4 little babies and everything runs so smoothly. It wasn't like this at first, Brittany laughed. There was a time when it was total chaos. They all cried at once, no one slept. What changed? We created a system, Heather explained. Each of us is mainly responsible for our own child, but everyone helps with all of them. And we have scheduled times for the main activities. What if someone needs to leave? For a doctor's appointment or something? The others take over, said Kayla. Last week, Ashley had to handle some things at the shelter, and we took care of Michael with no problem. It's like a real family. That's exactly it, Megan. A family we chose. And the baby's fathers, none of them are involved. Tyler, Hope's father, is very present, Kayla explained. He works during the day but comes here every evening, and on weekends he spends all his time with us. That's nice. And the others? Gabriel's father disappeared, Brittany said. But it's okay. Gabriel has a loving grandfather, my dad, and Mrs. Shirley has become like a grandmother to him too. And John's father? Megan asked Heather. He showed up once, wanting me to go back to him. But when he saw I was doing fine here and didn't need him anymore, he lost interest. Typical man who only wants what he can't have. And Michael's father? Megan asked Ashley. It's more complicated. He's married. He lied to me the whole relationship. But his mother, Mrs. Shirley, is one of the project's biggest supporters. Mrs. Shirley, is she the elegant lady who was here yesterday? That's her. An incredible woman who took responsibility for her son's mistakes and decided to help us. And her son, doesn't he want to meet Michael? According to Mrs. Shirley, he does, but I'm not ready for that conversation yet. Maybe one day, when Michael's older. Ashley, can I give my opinion? Of course. I think you're right not to rush. Michael is growing up surrounded by love and positive role models. He doesn't need a father who might bring emotional instability. That's exactly how I feel. If one day Brandon proves he's truly changed, that he can be a positive presence in Michael's life, then we'll talk. But I won't expose my son to disappointment. At that moment, Father Richard arrived for his weekly visit. Good afternoon, ladies. How are the little ones today? Everyone's doing well, Father. And look at our new addition, said Ashley, introducing Megan. Megan, welcome. I hope you find the support you need here. Thank you, Father. Everyone has been so welcoming. Father, said Brittany. Megan was asking about the baby's fathers. We ended up talking about how important it is not to force relationships just because a child is involved. Brittany touched on something very important. For years, I advised couples to stay together for the kids, even when the relationship was clearly toxic. Now I understand that can do more harm than good. How so, Father? Megan, children who grow up in a conflict-filled environment, even if their parents are together, suffer far more than those raised in a healthy, single-parent home. So you think it's better to raise a child alone than in a troubled relationship? I believe it's better to raise a child in an environment of love and stability, no matter the family structure. And you all are living proof of that. Father, can I ask you something? Said Megan. Of course. Did you always think this way? About families, relationships? No, Megan. Until I met these women, I had a very rigid, traditional view of family. I believed there was only one right model: father, mother, children, an unbreakable marriage. What changed your perspective? Seeing love in action. Watching women who were rejected and abandoned create a family based on choice, mutual support, and unconditional acceptance. That taught me family isn't about structure, it's about love. Father, can I confess something? Said Ashley. Of course. When you first showed up here, I thought, here he comes to judge me, to lecture me about sin and punishment. I never imagined you'd become one of our biggest supporters. Ashley, can I confess something too? Go ahead. You were right. I came here ready to judge and condemn. But you all taught me that a pastor's role isn't to be a judge, it's to be a shepherd, to guide, protect, and care. And now, how do you feel about your ministry? I feel like I've finally understood my true calling, and I owe that to all of you. Father, will you be at the new shelter's opening? Asked Heather. Of course, and Bishop William has confirmed he'll be there too. He's very impressed with the project's results. The bishop is really coming? Asked Megan, surprised. Yes, he is. And you know why? Because this project is changing the social reality of the area. The number of at-risk young pregnancies has dropped dramatically. Really? Really? And that's not all. Other parishes want to replicate Dorothy's Shelters model in their communities. Wow, that's amazing, Megan exclaimed. Yes, Megan. What started as a solution to Ashley's personal problem has turned into a social movement. Social movement? Ashley asked, surprised by the term. Yes, Ashley. You're changing how society treats single mothers, unconventional families, and women in vulnerable situations. That's a social movement. I never thought of it that way. Well, you should. And you should be proud of what you've built. Just then, Mrs. Shirley arrived carrying several shopping bags. Good afternoon, everyone. I brought a few things for the babies. Mrs. Shirley, you didn't have to, said Brittany. Of course I did. Being a grandmother means spoiling your grandchildren and helping wherever needed. Mrs. Shirley, said Megan, who didn't yet know the whole story. May I ask how you got involved with the project? Megan, my son is Brandon's father. And unfortunately, my son wasn't responsible at all toward Ashley. So I decided that since he wasn't stepping up, I'd take on my responsibilities as a grandmother. And your son? How does he feel about it? At first, he was angry, said I was enabling blackmail. But now he's starting to understand that his actions have consequences. Does he want to meet the baby? He does. But Ashley isn't ready yet, and I fully support her decision. Mrs. Shirley, Ashley said, can I say something? Of course, dear. It's not just that I'm not ready. I don't trust him yet. Brandon hurt me deeply. He lied about fundamental things. Before I let him near Michael, I need to be sure he's really changed. And you're absolutely right, Ashley. A child isn't an experiment. If Brandon wants to be part of Michael's life, he has to prove he deserves that chance. Exactly. And in the meantime, Michael is growing up surrounded by people who love him unconditionally. Megan, Mrs. Shirley said, you'll see how special this place is. Here you'll find more than shelter, you'll find a family. I'm already feeling that. In just a few hours here, I've felt more welcomed than in months at my parents' house. And your parents? Do they know you're here? They do, actually. It was my mom who looked into Dorothy's shelter and suggested I come. She said it would be better for me and the baby. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She is. She was also a very young mother, just 18. She said back then there wasn't this kind of support. She had to face everything alone. How did she manage? With great difficulty. That's why she didn't want me going through the same thing. She said if there's a place where I could get help, I should accept it without pride. What a wise woman. And she's welcome to visit you here anytime. Really, visitors are allowed. Of course, Brittany said. Our family members come here all the time. My mom practically lives here. She visits so often. What about boyfriends? I mean, if someone is dating, that's fine too, Heather replied. Tyler, Kayla's husband, comes here every day. In fact, they're getting married next month. How wonderful! And will you have the celebration here? We will, Kayla said excitedly. It'll be a small wedding, just family and close friends, but here in the backyard. How romantic, getting married where you met and supported each other. That's exactly what we thought. This place is special to all of us. End of story. And now, dear listener, tell us, what did you think of Father Richard's transformation? Do you believe Ashley made the right decision in creating this project? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel.